Hi, I'm Pat Keegan and welcome to the shop. In this week's short video, I'm going to show you how to put an edge band on the front of the shelves that we've been making for the kitchen project that we've been working on in this series of videos. Most of the cabinet shelves that you see are usually edge banded. We don't want to see this series of layers of the plywood. That's not usually aesthetically pleasing in kitchen or built-in cabinets or bookcases. So we definitely want to put an edge band on the front of this. There's about a dozen different ways to put edge bands and different reasons for using those ways on the fronts of these shelves. Typically in bookcases and cabinets and built-ins that you're going to see the shelves, you use a thicker piece of 1x2 stock or which might have a nice round over or a chamfer on the edge, and you'll attach it like this. There's three reasons that we would do that. The first is to hide these striated layers of plywood because we don't want to see them. The second thing is, over time when you stack a lot of books on these shelves, they're going to sag in the middle to some degree. Attaching a 1x2 edge banding piece like a face frame actually lends a lot of strength and support to keep the shelf from sagging in the middle. And the third reason we do it, typically in bookcases and built-ins and things like that where shelves are shown, is because it lends a little bit of robustness and solidity to the view of the cabinet. It gives it a really sturdy appearance to the shelves and the overall built-in appearance. For kitchen cabinets, we don't necessarily need all of that because we're not going to be seeing the inside of the shelves very often, except for when we open the cabinet doors. Most of the times the cabinet doors are closed, unless you have kids like I do who leave the cabinet doors open all the time. So for that purpose, and also we want to make sure that we have a lot of room in the cabinet, so I don't want to be having to have an 1.5-inch piece of solid stock overhanging these cabinet edges, because that would interfere with putting stuff in and taking stuff out, and I don't want that in a kitchen cabinet. So for our edge banding purposes, we're going to achieve one of those three goals. We're going to make sure that we have a nice edge banding on the front of this, which is just going to mirror the size and thickness of the cabinet here, of the shelf rather. And we're going to do it using a veneer tape, which basically has the glue already stuck to the inside of it. So because of that, we're just going to have to heat up this tape when it's on there, make sure that it's attached, and the glue will melt when we heat it up and it will stick to this. So, and then we'll trim it up later and make it look nice. And I'll show you how to do all of that in just a minute. One of the things I wanted to mention with respect to measuring was that when you're creating a shelf, you want to create it a little bit smaller on the overall width and overall depth compared to the inside of the cabinet, because you want to easily be able to set in your cabinet shelves to rest upon the shelf pins, which we drilled all the holes for in the last sets of videos. So one of the things that we'll do is I'll measure the inside of the cabinet. Actually, I know the measurements from the drawings that I made. So the inside of our cabinets that we're going to be doing these shelves for today is about 30.5 inches. Similarly, the depth of the cabinet from the back of the cabinet to the inside of back of the face frame was 10.25 inches. So I don't want to make it exactly 10.25 because then it'll be really tight to fit and get in and out, and wood does expand and contract, even plywood to some degree. Even though plywood is much more dimensionally stable than a piece of solid stock, it does expand. So I want to make it a little less deep than the full 10.25 inches inside our cabinet. So I'll make it about 10 3/16 or 10 1/8 at the most. You don't really need to take off much. About a 1/16 to 1/8 from each dimension is good enough. So let me get these cleaned up on the table saw. I've already cut them to their overall width using the circular saw and the jig that I've shown you in previous videos. So now I'm just going to trim them to about 10 3/16 or 10 1/8, somewhere right in there, on the table saw. And let me get that done and we'll get started on the edge banding. Okay, I've got all the shelf pieces that I need cut to their final dimension with their length and depth to the sizes that I need. Now it's time to apply the edge banding. Again, you don't need a lot of expensive tools to do this. It's a very simple, straightforward process, and it gives you a really, really nice finish And these shelves are 3/4 of an inch thick, so they're very sturdy. They're not like 1/2 inch or 5/8 inch, which tend to flex a lot more inside cabinets when you start stacking heavy plates on them and things. So to apply the edge band, you really kind of have to apply it on the edge, and we want to hold the edge sturdy. If you have a vise or a clamp set of some sort, you can do that. I simply take these clamps and just apply them to the bottom of the shelf. They have a nice, kind of rubber grip on the end so I don't scratch them. And that pretty much holds it steady for what I need it for. Then I take the edge banding material and I set out about roughly what I need and just, kind of mark it. And with this stuff you can just, it's real flexible because it's veneer, it's real brittle actually, not flexible. And then it'll snap very easily. The width of the veneer edge banding that already has the glue on the back is thicker than a piece of plywood. It's definitely wider, so that's good because then we'll trim the rest off later. But you do have to be careful that you're maintaining a relatively even distance, because sometimes when you're rolling the glue, once it's heated up and you're melting it and you're pushing it into place, sometimes it's easy to actually go off the edge, and you can get a little bit where the edge of the plywood is showing, and you definitely don't want that. So once I've got the piece, kind of measured to what I want, the next tool that I need to use is a heat gun of some kind, or I think you can use a hair dryer. I've never done it, but I've heard of people doing the hair dryer method. It does about the same thing. You can actually, I see techniques where people can use flat irons or like a regular clothing iron. I've never used that way, so you have to adjust the temperature or make sure that you may put something over the veneer so that you don't burn it, because it burns pretty easily if you leave heat on it for a long time. So I simply use a heat gun. I turn the heat gun on, make sure that I can heat up an area, get it stuck, and then I just work my way down using the roller. So let me get my roller and then we'll be ready to start. Okay. And I just apply a little heat fairly close. You can kind of see that it gets ready when it starts to curl. Then I just kind of push my finger on it. It's a little warm, but it's not too bad. And then I just start working the heat gun down. Starting to use a little roller here to roll it on, to press it really firmly. To make sure that that glue sets really well on there. Again, you want to be mindful, it takes a little bit of patience, but you always have to be mindful that you're not wandering the veneer off the edge of the plywood. And then I just give it a once over, heating it up again, and making sure that I'm pressing really firmly with that roller. Being mindful not to go off the edge. All right. Alright, so that's on there pretty solid. It's still a little bit warm. You want to make sure that it cools just a little bit. But I think this is pretty good. Then the next thing I do is I've got to trim, if you can kind of see it here, I've got to trim these edges off. And then I've got to trim it to fit the thickness of the plywood. So the first thing I do is I turn it over so that it's on its edge that I just edge banded. Again, I'll push a little firmly just to make sure that that's really glue, but the glue is really, really good on this stuff. You just got to heat it up a little bit and it'll do the job. So then I'm going to just take a utility knife and brace it against the edge of the shelf and just cut through that veneer a couple of times, score it, nice and easy, and then you just break the piece off, and so it's perfectly now flush with that edge. So I'll flip it over and do the same thing to the other side. Score it nice and easy. And then just break that up piece off. Now, to do this edge, it's very difficult to see, but I'll try to show you with the camera. You can kind of see that the veneer tape is a little bit wider than the actual plywood, so I need to trim that down. A lot of people like to use a utility knife and just kind of use their thumb and, you know, score it along the edge or try to shave it down. I don't like doing that because you can mar the edge of the shelf, or you can actually chip the veneer away. You know, again, for not a lot of money, they sell this. It's a sizing tool specifically for this purpose. Again, it's difficult to show you, but there's two like edges here that the tape is meant to fit in, and then you just squeeze it around the plywood and you pull it toward you, depending on which way the grain of the edge band is, and then that automatically shears it to the right thickness. And I do it in a couple of steps. I don't try to get it all at once because that leads to like tearing of the veneer, and you don't want to really do that. So I'll just show you here. You fit the tool over the piece of plywood, making sure that the veneer is in the slots that you'll see, which you can kind of see here. And then I just nice and easy drag it down. And you can see it takes the shavings off just like a block plane would do. And then I just do it again. I don't try to do it all in one pass. I take it nice and easy. You can go back and forth each way until you don't hear the ripping noise anymore. And that's it. And that's all it takes pretty much to put a nice edge banding, veneered edge banding on your shelf, and it again matches. If I didn't mention it earlier, when you get this at your lumber supply store, you get the same veneer edge band to match the wood, although that seems obvious. They do make a pre-finished maple edge banding, so I don't have to do anything to this once it's done. Other edge bands you can get with kind of raw wood where you can actually stain it to match. If you know you had cherry or something like that, that would be fine. So that's it for these and for this video. I'm going to work on the rest of these and finish these up, but until next time, thank you for watching, and I appreciate it. I hope you learned something. Thanks.